And welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Sameshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. We're having technical difficulties, but it looks like we just straightened them out. So this podcast will get posted a little later than normal. And at any rate, we're going to do the Brahma Sutras today. And classically, the Brahma Sutras have been something that have been thought of as something that people should want to understand them unless they're already in unity consciousness, sort of early Brahman consciousness. And in that case, they'll be able to understand it, and it will help stabilize that higher state of Brahman consciousness. You might wonder why, why would reading text like that or listening to it help stabilize it and bring a higher state of consciousness? It's a very interesting thing, really, because you have two aspects. You have experience and knowledge. Knowledge and experience. And on the deeper levels, as we go deeper into our experiences and deeper into knowledge, they start to merge. And in fact, knowledge on its deepest level is experience. Consciousness, pure consciousness, has two attributes to it. One is just the experience of it, and the other is the knowledge contained within it. And we'll get into that more, and we'll clarify just what that means as we go through these first dozen sutras or so. And as we do that, the understanding will deepen. So let's start with the first sutra, Tato Brahma Jigyasa. It translates like here and now. Here and now is the desire to know Brahman. Brahman is the totality. It's like the whole box of wax, so to speak, the whole thing. Absolute, relative, all amalgamated into one wholeness. And the idea, see, like all these sutras, they can be interpreted on different levels. So on a more superficial level, really, it's that everything is gravitating back to oneness. And that's experienced as desire. If we pick up a guitar and can't play it, we have a desire, wouldn't it be great to play the guitar? If we hear somebody speaking a foreign language, wouldn't it be great to become one with that language so that we could understand that language and know that language? Everything in nature is gravitating back to wholeness, back to oneness, back to what can be called the unified field, Chaitanya, Bhavatitam. And it maps on all the different levels of creation. Water, when it rains, falls on a mountaintop and goes down the stream, and it's a whole process. Eddy currents, rapid turbulence, waterfalls, pooling of water, until eventually it returns to that unbounded ocean of oneness, the ocean. So we see these processes, an acorn falls to the ground, becomes a tree, merges back with Mother Nature, becomes a tree, another acorn is born, the cycle continues, you see, from the absolute to manifestation and back to the absolute, back to Mother Earth in the example of the tree. Now, it can also be interpreted, Ato Brahma Jigyasa, can also be interpreted as when a person first, see, enlightenment comes about gradually all of a sudden. It's a slow process. Some people have even likened it to crossing a desert. You know, you're doing your meditation, you're doing all this. Maybe you don't notice a whole bunch of transition, maybe some transition. But at one point, it's like a big, huge shift, a big, huge phase transition. And when that happens into the full early stages of Brahman consciousness, that's when it's like almost unbearable. I mean, the whole thing, all of existence coming together within you and within your perception, what you see, everything is overwhelming. And so here the Brahma Sutras would be saying, okay, now from here, you know, boom, it happened. And now the real desire to know Brahman, what happened to me?
Michael,
Yeah.
aren't there stages of that you have to be very careful where, you know, like even
Yeah.
from the beginning stages where you're like, okay, I'm here, this is it, and it's
See,
not.
yeah,
Yeah.
see, that's the thing is that the whole thing is elusive, really, because people will have an awakening. Or I've seen people who aren't into spirituality at all, and they pick up a copy of some channel book, and they read it and they say, "Oh, I get it. Well, I'm enlightened." And see, there are a lot of awakenings, infinite number of awakenings, but they all fall into like 108 general categories, and then there are more and more subcategories of those 108. So it's even an awakening the first time you taste ice cream. Whoa! Or it can be awakening. I remember when I was in first grade. I remember this, and I learned the teacher wrote "look" on the board and put two eyes, you know, in the O's. And so, you know, the eyes were looking, the O's were looking like they were eyes, and to me, that was, whoa, you know, it was an awakening, all kinds of awakenings. And along the path of spirituality, there are different awakenings. And it's very common, and not to be offensive, but some cultures more than others, they have an awakening, they decide they're enlightened, you know, and then they think they're a bodhisattva, or, you know, the tangents they get on are ridiculous. So that gives you an idea. But what I really want to focus on in this podcast is what a person who enters that real state of Brahman consciousness, what happened to me? You know, that state of overwhelm that's almost unbearable. So the second sutra, Janmadasya Yataha, it means it's from which, referring to Brahman in the previous sutra, from which comes the birth, maintenance, evolution of the whole universe, the whole relative existence. Now, on one level, okay, we get that. Yeah, Brahman, the absolute, okay, it all comes from that. But now let's go back to what is a person who first entered that experience of early Brahman consciousness, which is so overwhelming. How does this address that experience directly? It's more clear as we go through the different sutras and view them as a wholeness. But you see, in those early stages, you have the direct experience, and it's mind-blowing, you know, that I am that pillow, or I am this telephone, or I am whatever it is you're looking at. And it's hard to deal with. I am that. And then concurrently with that, that pillow, and this is just a direct perception, it's an experience, it's an expansion of consciousness. That pillow is, this is going to sound trippy, the source of all of this. And to put it in words, it's like that pillow is, the Vedic term would be Ishvara. It's God. And I mean, everything's one with God. We know that and everything. But we're talking about a actual experience here. So that this second sutra isn't just, oh yeah, okay, I get it. It's all the birth of everything. And yeah, I get it. We're all one and we all come from the same one thing, blah, blah. I am that, thou art that, all this is nothing but that. But we're talking about an experience that is so mind-blowing that you don't know what to do with it. What do I do with that? And so you see now we have the experience and then we have knowledge. And knowledge, as it goes deeper and deeper, you see, we think of knowledge as like an intellectual understanding, something we learn. But we're talking about pure knowledge here. We're talking about knowledge as inherent in the essential nature of the foundation of all existence and perceiving that in the pillow or whatever it is you're looking at. So you see that second sutra takes on so much deeper meaning. And it's comforting to actually see it or to hear it in the Brahma Sutras. It's like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I'm not going crazy. Now, the next one, the third Brahma Sutra, Shastra Yonetavat. That means that Brahman is the womb, is the source of Shastra. Now, okay, on one level we say, well, yeah, Shastra, I know what Shastras are. That's all the Vedic chants and all the Vedic literature and all that. Those are the Shastras. And that's true. But again, we're talking about an experience of a person that just entered Brahman consciousness and is trying to figure out what happened to him. It's unbearable because now here the Shastras don't just mean verses of the Vedas. Here now the Shastras are inherent in all things in existence. It's your experience, the totality of all thingnesses, the whole relative world, me, you, the pillow, the chairs, the room, the neighborhood, all the way out to the Hiranyagarbha, really. All that, it's your experience. And just like when you look at the pillow, it's all birthed out of that one thing that you perceive the pillow as being, or whatever your object is, perception is. You experience it as that. And so it's the birth of Shastra, which can be translated as scripture, but in a larger sense, it can be in the entire material existence, which all amalgamated together is a wholeness in and of itself. And so you've got the wholeness of the totality of your own being, your own awareness, and you've got the totality of the integration, the wholeness of all things in the relative. Nirguna Brahma, the wholeness of the absolute. And Sadguru Brahma, which is the wholeness of the relative, you see? Okay. Hopefully that's a deeper understanding of the third. I hope I communicated that well. Now here's the next one. The fourth, this is so beautiful. Tatu Samadvaya. It can translate that it all comes from Samanvaya, from harmony. So what it's saying here is all the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, all the different aspects of all of relative existence, past, present, future, the whole thing, the whole ball of wax, all integrates into a wholeness that is a harmony that is Brahman, that is that pillow. It all comes. So Brahman then, from that perspective, and it's the experience here now that we're talking about, Brahman then, from that experience, is that Brahman is born out of harmony. The harmony of all thingnesses, when taken as a unified whole, creates Brahman. Whereas in the previous sutra, it talks about Brahman as being the source of the totality. Well, it goes both ways. It goes both ways. And to get that intellectually is one thing, but can you imagine? The experience of it is just completely mind-boggling, because it's not just the pillow, it's anything you look at, and it's also any larger set of things that you look at. This room with all the things in it, that's another samhita, that's another totality, that's another wholeness that is the source of everything and is Brahman. And anywhere you look, all levels of existence, everything, pregnant with knowledge, total knowledge. That pillow, the total knowledge of all life, all existence, everything is contained in that pillow. And that's your direct experience. Someone was trying to understand that, and this I think helped them a little bit, because I said, do you understand mathematics? I say addition and subtraction, I said, and they said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, does that mean that you, in your head right now, have added all the different numbers together and it's all there right now in your, and no, right. But you have the source of that knowledge. You are that knowledge. You are the essence of that knowledge. That's called pure knowledge. Maybe that'll help. But these are beautiful, beautiful sutras, you know. Okay. Next sutra. Ikshate na shabdam. Oh, this is another incredible one. Ikshate. They're all incredible. Ikshate na shabdam. Because of cognition is the idea. Now, what is cognition? Typically, we think of cognition as, okay, the rishis thousands of years ago had such pure physiologies that they went into the depth of their being, and it's like their physiology became like a loudspeaker through which aspects of the Veda, depending on the nature of the uniqueness of their individual physiology, different aspects of the Veda would well up through that individual, and it would come out as a Vedic chants that the pundits heard, memorized, passed along through the generations, and that's what you hear chanted at temples today. Classically, that's called cognition. And here it's saying that cognition is not opposed to scripture, and this knowledge is not opposed to scripture because of cognition. So now here's a new definition of cognition that I think, imagine you're in that state and you look at the pillow, or you look at anything, no matter how big or how small, no matter how big, no matter how small, and contained in that thing, say the pillow, it's a cognition of the totality of existence, the totality of scripture. So it's almost like, in this sense, scripture can be likened to the totality of relative existence, if you will. And cognition is the direct experience that is so, one of the aspects of that direct experience is so overwhelming when you first enter Brahman consciousness, early Brahman consciousness. What happened to me? What's going on? Almost unbearable. Okay? Next sutra. Koshanchan Natma Shabdat. Cognition, it says, is not secondary to the Shastras, to Brahman, because of Atma. Now, what is Atma? Atma is it's very interesting, right? Atma is the essence of the individual, the experiencer, the being. And here saying it's not secondary because of Atma, because within the Atma, the cognizer, is an awakening and awareness of the totality of all existence. And therefore, that cognition is not secondary to it, it is it. I am that, thou art that, all of this is nothing but that. It's your experience, and it's not secondary. But see, it brings up an interesting point here, is that Brahman consciousness, it's not a thing. In a sense, we could say the absolute, even though it's a field of no thingness, we can view it in a sense as a thing. All these objects are things. But Brahman consciousness isn't a thing. Brahman consciousness is a state of awareness, a level of consciousness that brings all of those things together within one's own awareness. But without the experiencer, there is no Brahman. That can be a tough one for people, I think. The absolute is absolute, it's always there. Chaitanya, unified field. The relative is there. But Brahman isn't there in that sense. It's in the consciousness of the perceiver. In Brahman consciousness. Tanishtasya moksha pradiksha. This is an interesting one. It translates very interestingly. In that, which is Atma, who is established, in that who is established, there is liberation. Here's the interesting part. Owing to the teaching. Now, typically we would say, oh, okay, so somebody has this experience and then they have the teacher comes along and teaches them all this stuff, and then they're in Brahman. Then they're liberated. But now the word teaching has a deeper meaning here. And yes, I mean, of course, the teacher, in the traditional sense, yes, but teaching here is taking on a meaning at a level that is both knowledge and experience of the experiencer. It's not about some external thing, oh, we're teaching you this. It's about teaching from the experience and sort of like dealing with that over a period of time. It becomes the teaching in and of itself. And that's what a person in early Brahman consciousness is doing. That's what they're dealing with. And it's mind-blowing. And it's the teaching, you see. Life experience, but on a very different level than we can go, oh, yeah, I'm getting wise because I have life experiences and I've been through much. No, we're talking about something much deeper here. Hayat cha. Hayatva means separation. And what this sutra is saying is that in moksha, in Brahman consciousness, in Brahman consciousness, there's no word for separation. No, it's funny because, wait a minute, that's the word right there. Hayatva, it says it right there. That means separation. So what we're saying here, though, is that on that level, there is no separation. So there's no word for separation. On that level, it's all Brahman. Somebody once asked Tutwa Baba why the universe, great saint in India, asked him why the universe manifested. And his response was it didn't. Svapyayat. This is the 9th sutra, Svapyayat. It means person just returns to themselves. A person in that early stages of Brahman consciousness, they're just returning to the self. It's all contained in the Atma. It's all contained in the self. And so the whole process of evolution really is just returning to the self. And the habit has been so much colored, if you will, the experience has been so much determined by what is perceived as non-self that we even lose touch with the self. But what they're saying is all this amounts to is just resting back into the self. Can you come back to the self fully? And when you do, the experience of everything changes. It's all totally the same, but it's totally different. See? Gati samanyat. Gati is like motion. And with it speaking of there, samanyat, the sameness. So it's the sameness of motion. What motion are we talking about here? Well, as the experiencer in those early stages and in Brahman consciousness, the motion is okay. You look at that pillow, and that pillow is Brahman. And then you bring the awareness to the totality. It's like a motion, or to the room, say. The pillow is that, the room is that, and then you go back. Either way, it works. From the room, the totality of the room to the pillow, from the pillow to the totality of the room, or from the Hiranyagarbha to this microphone and back. There's no difference. It's all Brahman. This is that, that is that. It's all just the sameness of motion. Because of the sameness of motion. And so then it's like, okay, it brings up an interesting question. Because in that experience, did the totality of existence create you, or did you create it? Did the totality of all relative things create Brahman? Or did Brahman birth the totality of all things? It goes either way. It goes either way. Shutravatscha. It comes from the source, from the core of Shruti. Now, what is Shruti? I think typically Shruti is thought of as, well, it means sound, but commonly Shruti is thought of as the unmanifest, the absolute. And then as it first starts to emerge into the relativity, it becomes sound. So what it's saying here is that knowledge and experience both come from the core of Shruti, the core of Shruti, which is the transcendental depth, Kaivalya, or Puran, the field of Puran, the silent ocean, the silent depth of the ocean before it starts bubbling up into relativity in any way. And it bubbles up through the swaras, which are like correlate to the vowels in Sanskrit, and then prakritis, the consonants, and then paraprakriti, the whole structure like that manifests everything in relativity. But it all comes from the unification of all things, the knower, the known, and the experience, the process of knowing. Rishi Devata Chandas. It all comes from the core of Shruti. So you see, the Devata value is a very interesting thing. The pillow itself, that's Chandas, right? That's thingness, that's material existence, if you will. The knower, the Atman, the absolute. And then there's a process of knowing, which is the Devata value. Now, what goes along with this state is it's not just cold, hard, objective like that, because that pillow is experienced as Ishvara. That pillow is God. And all of this is lightly etched on the face of pure being, like a virtual image almost. Scotty, are you there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And it is you. But it's also, and now Ishvara, some define Ishvara as Shiva. Others define Ishvara as chosen, your personal God based on your physiology. I can only speak for myself that Ishwar is, it's like he who has no name, no opinion, no comment, no perspective, just pure awareness as the eternal backdrop to all of existence. The Devata. And you are one with that. Can you imagine you enter this state? It's not easy. It's overwhelming. It's So we'll just do one or two more. Anandamaya Vyasat. It means interesting. Through practice, the experience becomes blissful. The experience, and again, we're talking to somebody who just entered Brahman consciousness here, and it's overwhelming and it's like almost unbearable. But through practice, what do you mean by practice there? Some people, well, practice, yeah, okay, you meditate and then the bliss grows. And that's true, but that's not what we're talking about here, really, not on the deepest level. We're saying that as you get used to it, and all these interconnections that are so vast and go both ways, movement in, movement out, whatever. When all those pieces start coming together and you get comfortable with it, then it becomes more and more blissful. But in the initial stages, I don't know if you'd call that bliss. Yeah, blissful, In the Bhagavad Gita, verse 8 of Bhagavad Gita, it's often translated as the word contented. When knowledge and experience come together into a unified whole, and our experience is the same one thing, the experience of that is bliss. Atma and Buddhi, when they come together, as pure intuition. Where's intuition that translates? Gut feeling. It's a gut feeling. It's a feeling in your being. It's just bliss. But it takes time. It takes practice. So now we have two interesting words here. The teaching, we're taught by the experience of it and living with it. And then on another level, the word is the guru, the Mahavakya, all that is it, So we have the teaching, but we also have the practice, which is the teacher on a particular level, Through the teaching, one knows it is everywhere. It is evident everywhere. And see, that's the teaching again. It's through the teaching. It's not about saying, oh, it's everywhere. Okay, I get that. I get the teaching. No. It's something much, much deeper. You're becoming one with the totality. It takes getting used to. It takes a lot of getting used to. It doesn't happen overnight. Anything else, Scotty? I think that does it, I think, for today.
It's quite a bit to chew on.
Yeah, this would be a good podcast to probably listen to more than once. I think what we're going to do, well, at some point, I want to do the Upanishads. I'm not sure when. There's so much I could say here. We didn't even talk about, for example, Smriti. Smriti is memory. And typically we think of Smriti as, okay, you got all this knowledge and all the intelligence that's the source of all existence, right? And then it manifests into relativity. And then there's some level of Smriti, some level of memory of that holds the thing together. Our physiology is functioning because there's some Smriti there that remembers the divine perfection within the absolute itself. And so in that sense, Smriti, memory, is something that is brought with us out of the absolute into the relative. But it goes both ways, because Smriti also is our memory, which we remember with the absolute through Smriti, you know. So Shruti and Smriti both go both ways, you know. All right, I guess that's it. And we'll talk with you again. Maybe we'll do Upanishads, maybe not. Let me think about it. Thanks for listening.